Hi, this is Celeste, and this is the Celestial Report. And once again, we're going out to the heavens and we're going to see what we can discover. And years ago, I would say it was in the 1980s, a really dear friend of mine named Bob Waltner, who is in glory now, introduced me to this book, Jesus, Lord of Time and Space. And of course, it was written by Lambert Dolphin, and here he was as a young man. And this book, I tell you, like my Bible, you all know I love science. I mean, I've got highlights. I've got the pages are falling out. As a matter of fact, I better get them put back in here right. But anyway, I contacted Lambert about a month ago, and I asked if he would come on to Celestial Report. And John, the little yellow box is on you, and I don't know why. Before we start, John.
It's actually okay. It's with you at the minute.
Oh, it's on my computer. It's on you. So, okay. Well, as long as it's a-okay before I get started, I wonder if I can, I got to do this view differently because I feel like everybody's like, no, not exit.
Celeste, it's not affecting anything on the broadcast. The broadcast is fine.
Okay. It's just nice to be able to see people, but oh well. Okay. So welcome, Lambert. It's wonderful to have you on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into science and all of that.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be with you today. I was born in Idaho in 1932 in the Depression years. And so I grew up with the world was very different and the culture was very different. My parents sent me to Sunday school, but I hated that right away. I was going to be a scientist. I remember I even had a playpen where I imagined what it would be like to grow up and be a rocket scientist. I called this chicken coop my man gaze when I sort of anticipated what it's like to be a man. So I thought the answers to life were going to be found in science. And that directed my aspirations as a kid. I did well in school. I went to San Diego State College, graduated with honors and distinction in physics and math. So I loved all the classes, all the math and all the science. And my professors sent me up to Stanford. And my best friend went to UC Berkeley across the bay, and I went to Stanford, and we both flunked out in a couple of years because graduate school was such a huge step up from a state college. But at Stanford, I sat under these Nobel Prize winners in physics and got to meet these incredibly gifted men and women and read their books. And so I took all their knowledge in, but I just didn't bother to get a PhD. I dropped out after 2 years because I saw that science was never going to answer those heart pangs for reality. So that was 1956, I guess. And here I am coming up on 30. And I thought, well, 30 is life's over at 30. You go downhill after that and you die. But who was this guy, Jesus, who died at age 30? So that stirred up my curiosity. I had a Jewish Christian girlfriend there, Paula Fern, who was wonderfully loving and supportive. And she thought we ought to check out some of the churches in the Bay Area, not the liberal churches, but some of the Bible churches. So we did. I ended up in a little Baptist church, pastor teaching out of the Schofield Reference Bible and old-fashioned salvation, and the people were so friendly. I thought about my grandmother in Idaho praying for me, and so after a few months going to the Baptist church, I made an appointment with the pastor. His dad had just died. He was not grief-stricken. He handed me his Bible. He said, "Be my guest. What are your questions?" I asked him a whole bunch of hard questions, and he wouldn't give me his opinion. He just pointed to chapters and verses in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I saw in the course of an hour, I saw the consistency of the whole Bible, that it agrees with itself, no matter Old Testament, New Testament. And I in that man's office, I thought, what if there really is a God? And the pastor said, he said, well, anytime you want to become a Christian, I'd like to be a witness to that. And that was the last straw, because I thought, uh-oh, he doesn't have anything to do with my coming to know Jesus, me and God. So I cried out to God, okay, God, I quit. It's how my very first prayer. I didn't think anything would happen, but I let go. And the moment I let go, I was flooded with love and the presence of Jesus and the feeling that I was changed radically. And I was. Cried all the way home that day, got baptized in the church, started memorizing the Bible. That launched me off into a relationship with Jesus. And of course, I had to rethink science, of course, pretty heavily. And I could see after a little while that science is limited pretty much to the three-dimensional world, space, time, and the physics of the physical. And then, so the Bible is revelation that tells us a great deal about unseen dimensions and other worlds and ultimate realities. So right away, I lost confidence in science as a way of understanding reality. And that provoked me to, I remember when the man who led me to the Lord pointed out that I didn't know Genesis very well. When I start reading that, it was inspired. I started reading Genesis, leapt out of the page. I thought, this is incredible. And that led to the book, Jesus, Lord of Time and Space. So to this very day now, I'm 89 now, I'm absolutely thrilled with the Bible, reading it morning, noon, and night. It's full of insights. I feel like I'm living in a completely different dimension of reality. And I think the universe is multidimensional. And I think it's a shame for people to get stuck in just the ordinary dimensions of length, width, height, and time. That's very naive, because the real world is much more beautiful than all that. Anyway, I'm ranting a lot, so you might want to stop me.
No, I won't stop you, but I'm going to ask you your first question. So how many dimensions do you think that we have?
Chuck Missler, a good friend of mine, said that he thought there were maybe 10 or 20 dimensions. And that makes good sense. Now, the other thing Chuck Missler taught me was that man is in midway between the microcosm and the macrocosm. If you think about man with a scale of about 2 meters, say 6 feet, the world inside of us, the world of the very small, is as many orders of magnitude smaller as the macrocosm of the galaxies is big. So here we are in the middle of this incredible universe, which is vast beyond understanding. And so we probe, by science, we probe into the atom, and we probe into the astronomy to infer interesting stuff about the universe, and that God created the whole thing, visible and invisible. And the greater part of the reality is invisible. So we live right now in a world of shadows, of partial truths. And science is dying away right now because people are losing confidence in science and the ability of science to tell us what vaccines to take and what pills to swallow and so on.
So do you think these other dimensions have inhabitants like there is in our dimension?
Well, right away, I could. The Bible talks about millions and millions of angels, of great angels, big mighty angels, lesser angels, all the way down to spirits and to demons, and the millions upon millions of angels. We even have guardian angels. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you probably have felt at some time or another the intervention of a guardian angel keeping you from trouble or saving you from an accident. But we're not allowed to talk to the angels. We can talk to Jesus all we want. So now Jesus is running the whole universe right now. So he's in charge of the principalities and powers. He's in charge of the dark side, as the left hand of God, as well as the right hand of God. He's in charge of everything visible and invisible. Several years ago, I had a near-death experience. I had become addicted to OxyContin. From the doctor prescribed it for me, and it turned me into a zombie for about 10 years. And it ended up in the ER, ready to die. Here I am, this is June 2017. And in the hospital, my doctor gave up on me, and my friends all came in and prayed for me, and I didn't die, apparently. And and on the way of recovery, the Lord said two things to me, clear as a bell. Lambert, will you stay away from the dark side for now? I will explain that to you later. I thought, boy, that's interesting. Jesus knows all about the dark side, and he'll give me a personal tour, but not now. That was good enough, because I was preoccupied with UFOs and fringe science and so on. The other thing that Jesus said to me is, from now on, Lambert, will you trust me and obey me one day at a time in every detail? That was brand new to me. I'd never heard that in church before. And it really works. And the moment I started doing that 100% to Jesus, I started getting my memories back, and I started seeing a whole different view of reality that I hadn't had in all those long years of knowing God and teaching the Bible and going to church. So I don't recommend a near-death experience for anybody, but I do recommend that you give your whole life to Jesus and let him live through you. Christian life's called the exchanged life. Norman Grubb and Major Ian Thomas taught that some years ago, and it really works. Jesus in you is the real new you. You'd think, boy, if I give my whole life to Jesus, he's going to destroy my individuality and I'm going to be a zombie. That isn't the way it works. If you turn your whole life over to Jesus, he gives you back your whole personality and your memories and your uniqueness. Every one of us is so unique. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, our history is, everything that's ever happened to us is being recorded and is important. We don't have to deny who we really are. The sin has to get washed away.
So what is the most interesting thing that Jesus told you about time?
Time is created. It's a created dimension. So when it says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, he doesn't say when the beginning was. The first thing that God created was the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1. And he created the template of the universe is 6 days. So there's time does not, as we know, it doesn't exist. God's the high and lofty one who lives in eternity. So he's going to create a universe in 6 days. It's going to be under construction for 6 days. And so those 6 days that are in Genesis 1 are very unique days and they're paired together, 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. They go together in pairs. And so here's a universe under construction, and we can watch the construction by looking at the Bible. When the universe is finished on the last day, God turns it on, switches, and then the laws of physics start running. Think of a grandfather's clock. You get a grandfather's clock kit from Amazon, and it's gears and wheels and pulleys and pendulums, and it won't tell time. So you got to put it all together. You have to assemble all those parts, and they got to be in there just right. When you get your clock put together, you can start it running. Now that's the way the laws of physics work. The laws of physics on the farthest stars are the same laws that govern the smallest atom. And you got to have the whole in place before you turn it on. So on the seventh day when God rested, he switched it on. He stopped creating. And from then on, we have recorded history, which goes back about, I think 6000 BC would be my date for creation.
So you don't think that during this first 6 days there was time?
Well, when those days are described in Genesis, there was no rotating earth, which is how we keep track of a day. So
that's true.
We just have these archetypes. Now, once the universe starts running, we know that we keep time by the rotation of the earth on its axis, and the length of time it takes the earth to go around the sun, which is 1 year. So that's called gravitational time or natural time. So the main dimension of time we live by is this linear historical time that starts with birth and ends up with death, starts with the creation and ends up with the new creation. But all this other dimensions of time that are in the spiritual world, science doesn't do well at all in talking about spiritual realities. Only thing science is good for is things that are testable and lots of data, and people arguing and fine-tuning all the data and coming up with a model that may or may not be correct. And then getting a new model that replaces the old model every few years, because we're limited to just observables. Well, most of what the Bible says is revelation. It's God telling us the way things were.
So do you think that there's going to be time in eternity? I mean, it's going to be eternity,
yes.
but is there going to be time in eternity?
You know, that's some of the old preachers would make a distinction between time and eternity, and they thought eternity was the absence of time. There was time no more. I don't think so. I think time is multidimensional, so I think the quality of time matters. With the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. Psalm 90. And I have eternal life right now. My body's wearing, I might die today, I don't know, but I have eternal life now as my present possession, so do you. And that means that the content that God puts in one day of my life is incredible. The variety and the excitement and the people and the learning and the insights every day is this adventure. Now, when we get to heaven, we're going to be able to talk all day long with a good friend, or go visit C.S. Lewis, or whoever we want. And so I think we can time travel. I think we can go back and observe the past, not change it. I think all those unfulfilled relationships that never quite worked out on earth will get fulfilled. We'll be talking to our brothers and sisters, and there won't be any sin there to get in the way. So we can just be ourselves and laugh and sing and enjoy heaven, which has to be an absolutely incredible place with animals and flowers and birds and incredible, and angels.
And good food, because there's the wedding supper of the Lamb. And so we know there's going to be good food up there. I don't know what we're going to eat, but it's got to be absolutely fantastic. And the good thing about it is, this is just my personal dream, is that we won't get fat. We won't put on weight.
No, but I thought a lot about this in the last few years. The model of a resurrection body that we have to go by is the model of Jesus after his resurrection. When he died on the cross, he was certainly dead. A centurion put a lance through his side, and out came blood and water, and this battered corpse was taken down and put in a borrowed tomb by the women. The men had fled, and so Jesus is dead as can be on Friday night, and Sunday morning he's alive and well, and he starts showing up, and he comes and goes mysteriously. He can walk through a solid wall. He can sit down and have a meal with his friends. He's recognizable if he wants to be recognizable. When on the road to Emmaus, when he's with these two disciples, he cloaks his identity. They don't know who he is, and he plays games with them, and it's very delightful. And then he'll show up in a meeting and talk to everybody and have dinner and see the nail wounds in my side. Look, I'm real. I'm the real Jesus. He's not a ghost. And then he'll say, "Got to leave now," and he leaves. I don't think he goes to check into a motel that night, or he doesn't even go to the Garden of Gethsemane and sleep there like he used to. So I think he disappears into another dimension until the next time. Then he shows up in Galilee with his disciples and cooks fish dinner for them. He shows up in a meeting with the Apostle Paul of 500 people. So I think that my new body and your new body will be like that. We'll be able to enjoy food and a glass of wine with Jewish dinner, and this incredible fellowship. And I won't have any sin in my body anymore, thank God, and no crud, no corruption. So nothing to impede the quality of life, the enjoyment of music and the enjoyment of friends and the communication, because our communication's all broken down now with everybody we know. It's so disappointing. But in heaven, no, and little children there and granddads and moms and incredible people for us to meet. Now, heaven has, the world population right now is about 8 billion people, 8 billion, 8,000 million. And maybe 10% know Jesus. Let's say there's 1 billion people in heaven. And not only from our generation, but from 2,000 years, all the believers are going to be there because Jesus is building this glorious church, going to take the wraps off. And when we get to heaven, then we're going to have to, us white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are a minority in heaven. We got a lot of people from China and India and Africa and people that have different cultural values but love the same Lord and have all this richness to share with us. So we got to get to be more used to the variety and diversity. God likes a lot of variety. Now, Jesus never got married. He's 30 years old. Most Jewish men are married by the time they're 15 or 16, as soon as they can afford it, and they have kids, and they live happily ever after. And Jesus would have lived forever after if they hadn't killed him. But he got put to death at the age of 30. And fortunately, he came back 3 days later, and he went home to the Father after 40 days. And he got home to the Father, and the Father said, "Son, you did what I asked you to do. You went down and died for the sins of the world." And Jesus says, "Oh, well, I was glad to do that. It wasn't fun, but I did it." And the Father says, "Well, you ought to have a wife. You're not married. You don't have the joys of a wife and kids. I'm going to give you a wife. And I'm not going to give you just a Jewish girl to marry. I'm going to give you the church to marry. And I've got her re-virginized now, and she is a beautiful bride. And I think you're going to enjoy this bride, not a sexual marriage,
Right.
but an intimate one. Intimate. And so the marriage supper of the Lamb is going to be this joyful singing and rejoicing as we get to see Jesus face to face. And he loves us for who we are as individuals, not for some stereotyped idea of what we ought to be. So there are little kids up there playing around. And I think the variety that's built into any one of us is so exciting. It's going to take us forever to get to know each other, but that's what it's all about. You go to a wedding, you want to know everybody there. So we're not far from the rapture and the wedding. I think it's right on the horizon now.
It is right on the horizon. So what did Jesus teach you about space?
Well, there's inner space and outer space. The world inside of me is as complicated and intricate as the external world. And the inner world is full of mysteries, dreams, memories, desires, emotions. It runs on a different set of rules than the heavens do. Psychology, psychoanalysis, religion is how to try to understand that inner world. So I like to think in terms of inner space and outer space. And God's revelation to us tells us a great deal about both places. And of course, we're fallen now. So he has to do a lot of repair work. And we're pretty messed up down here. And so God's in the process of making us whole and well-rounded and balanced and making us, stopping all this war going on inside of ourselves. Because the evil in the world is pretty much in this old body. And when I get rid of the old body, I'm going to get rid of an awful lot of trouble. So
do you believe that the inner body, the inner space, is a fractal of the outer space?
Probably, yes.
Because there's that model and template, just like the model and template of the first 6 days is a fractal outward for eternity.
I think that makes good sense. Now, the place you get a sense of the wholeness is when you see a painting or a work of art, or you hear
Mm.
some beautiful music, or you get this moment of awareness of the whole cosmos, that sense of wholeness. And that's just the fullness of God's presence, because truth is hidden away in inner space and outer space, and it's there for us to discover. So we're invited to explore both dimensions. I mentioned that God didn't want me exploring the dark side, which has somewhat to do with inner space, to not go there right now, because I can get in big trouble right away, get off on a tangent. And there's a lot of false religion in the world that's very deceptive and misleading. And so I don't want to go down one of those dead end alleys.
So did you ever study about the stars singing?
Oh, yes. I have a good friend, Barry Setterfield, up in Grants Pass, who 1987, we got together all the statistics on the speed of light, and he showed that light was slowing down, and that the universe really is young. And the original speed of light was millions of times higher than it is now, and it's still decreasing, but it's defined to be constant. And that sort of opened up my understanding of so. And I think also you get all those stars out there. You can't see them anymore with all the street lights, but if you go out into a dark place, like the ancients would have looked up at the heavens at night and seen all these galaxies. Well, there are 12 zodiac signs of the zodiac that the ancients could sit down and tell the story of redemption, the gospel in the stars. And that's a very beautiful thing to study, because the stars now have secular names, but they point to original signs of redemption that appear to revolve around with the year. I'm a little rusty on that now, but my friend Barry Setterfield at Christmas time always brings up the Christmas star and brings up the journey of the Magi to Bethlehem. So
I have to wonder, as I speculate and I ponder, there's that Christmas song, I wonder as I wander. So I wonder if those constellations that tell this different parts of the salvation story, that everybody, it is basically the scriptures written in the heavens,
yes,
that they are also singing. That particular constellation is singing that particular part of the creation story, because the birth of Jesus was not a silent affair. There were animals lowing, and there were the shepherds and angels singing on high, and the wise men bringing their gifts. Now, they might have been more solemn and silent, but I can imagine that it was not chaotic, but it was this beautiful blend of music, which is frequency, and that each one of these constellations had a part to sing on that particular night, and through echoing throughout eternity. So I got to ask you, at Celestial Report, we are studying, or we are exploring our favorite Christmas carol and hymns. So what is your favorite Christmas carol, and what is your favorite hymn?
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. That's a plain song. It's very old, and if you get one sung by Jewish Christians, it's very meaningful. Now, Chuck Misser pointed out that the prophet Daniel started a astrology center in Babylon, where he gathered together all the experts from Babylon, and they studied the Bible, and they figured out the gospel in the stars. So the wise men who came to Jerusalem, probably dozens of them, in this big armed military entourage, came to Bethlehem, and they were following what they'd learned in Daniel's school, and they come to Jerusalem. I tend to think that the Christmas star probably was the Shekinah glory. It's probably God, because it seems to move around. So I think that God's testimony to his son might well have been this star that moved. It's really the third person of the Trinity, the Shekinah glory.
Well, it would fit the model because remember when Jesus got baptized, the dove came down, kind of in the same manner from the heavens, you know.
Yeah.
So
But, yeah.
we could think that.
Jesus was probably born in September around the Feast of Tabernacles.
Mhm.
So our celebration of Christmas is pretty well drawn from the culture of Rome and Germany, and it's pagan, our pagan holiday. But Christmas is nevertheless a wonderful time. I was in India for Christmas in 1970, and they don't even pay any. You never know it was Christmas or not. In fact, I was with a friend, and we were staying at a big hotel in Bombay, and it's Christmas morning. And so we thought we'd have a nice breakfast. And we went down, no Christmas trees, no lights, no nothing going on. And we ordered a nice breakfast. And I ordered an omelet. And we're sitting down and thanking God for Christmas and our friends back home in California. And a little worm crawled right across my omelet, a little inchworm. It was so funny because we thought, oh, that's India and the poverty and squalor. And of course, the waiter was embarrassed and came and brought us a new omelet. But there was not a hint of Christmas as we know it in faraway India. And so Christmas is this European tradition that came over into the Catholic Church. And well, that's a long story.
But I think the important thing is that we remember that Jesus was born. He was a real person. He wasn't just this, you know, a fictional character in a play or a book.
Yeah.
That he was real, that he was born, and that he lived his life, and then he laid down his life for our sin. So it doesn't matter what day you really remember that. Just like, so I'm born the day after Christmas.
Oh.
And it's not a very good day to be born, I can tell you, because everybody does the Christmas thing and then the New Year's thing. And in between, it's just, you know. And so my brother was born the week before, and he made out like a bandit. So I was having a conversation with my mom one time, and she said, well, you should change your birth date. And I'm thinking to myself, Mom, you should have thought about that before. I mean, so she just told me to change my birthday. So, you know, I guess that might have been a common thing, you know, change your birthday. But so what other things in science did you learn that maybe you didn't learn in the textbooks, but you've learned from the Bible?
The science is silent about the future. And of course, a third of the Bible is Bible prophecy. It tells us what's coming down. And God always does what he said he's going to do, whether anybody pays attention or not. So it might interfere with our plans that he's going to do something, but that's no big deal. He's also, I think the lockdown was an act of mercy to get our attention. God doesn't want anybody to perish. By stopping everything all over the world, shutting it all down, I think this is God saying, hey, look, you guys aren't paying attention to me. I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. I want you to know me. I want you to know me intimately. I want you to pay attention because I'm going to take you believers to a safe place. And it's not going to be pretty down here if you want to be left behind. So that's wonderfully rich. My world today would be in absolutely shambles if I didn't have this personal relationship with Jesus every single day. Some days are pretty scary in the spiritual warfare, but that's because we're identified with Jesus in his death, burial, and resurrection. We got to go to the cross and die to self, and that's not fun. But once you die to self, you get all this new resurrection life right now. And so the dynamic of knowing Jesus is very interesting. Either you know him or you don't know him, and either you're obeying him or you're not obeying him. And there's an awful lot of flaky, compromised people going to church that don't realize what they're missing out on. And the sheer adventure and joy of one day with Jesus. So I don't care too much that I'm an old man. I should have died a long time ago. But I'm never going to die, and you aren't either.
Well, I'm thankful that you're here because you have been such a blessing in my life. I mean, we didn't really know each other, but you have been a blessing since I received this book from my friend. So
Well,
you have been a part of my life and a part of my prayers all that time.
that's wonderfully reassuring because the last few years I have been very lonely years. I'm not married, don't have any kids. And the church I once was part of is all shut down and locked down. And I have handfuls of dear friends come by, which is a joy, a small Bible class, small groups, but not nearly as much as I'd like. So to meet some of your people out there, by the way, my website's free. I don't copyright anything. I answer all my own emails. So if any of your friends anywhere want to get to know me, that's more important than anything else, is to get to know people. So I hope I'm not asking for overload of email, but good heavens, all my stuff is not there for my benefit. It's giveaway. And I try to write consistently, and I try to write theologically sound, because I'm well aware of all the sidetracks people get on.
Absolutely. There's a lot of rabbit trails out there.
Rabbit
Uh,
trail.
so what is your website so that people could find your other work beside Jesus, Lord of Time and Space? And actually, this book is out of print now, but you can find it at Lambert's website. So what is your website?
ldolphin.org. ldolphin.org. I think there's 13 gigabytes or something there. And now I have been writing about an article or so every day or so, and those articles are on ldolphin.org/annex, ANNEX.html. And I'm just writing profusely because of this wonderful overload of information from the Lord, which is so exciting. And as I said, my email is lambert@ldolphin.org, and I just love getting to know people. I was shy and lonely and introverted and had a terrible inferiority complex. And so I missed out on a lot of the fun of childhood. And I've never had a wife, come close a couple of times, and I love being single. But on the other hand, I also realize that we're social creatures. We belong to each other. And there's great joy in getting to know men and women, old and young, and kids, and not being afraid of the one-on-one connections that we have, where you really see through to Jesus in another person.
So we actually do have a community. So you are welcome to join our community. It is virtual. There's no way around it because we're all over the world. But I will send you that information. We'll put you on our newsletter, and you can keep up with what I'm doing. And you're welcome. Pop in. It's Tuesday evenings, and we meet for about 3 hours. And so we talk about, there's no sacred cows. We talk about everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And sometimes we just pray as the Spirit leads, especially if someone is in need or we just feel burdened to pray, we'll do that. We're going to have a Christmas sing-along next Wednesday. We're going to sing Christmas carols together over the internet. So, yeah. So John, do we have any questions for Lambert?
He's disappeared into a warp.
Yeah, he did.
I went into a black hole there. I don't know what happened.
He did go into a black hole.
I've never seen a person fall into a black hole until now.
That was interesting, wasn't it? Okay, let's I'll come out of the black hole. Yeah, he was talking about fractals and different dimensions and all kinds of other things. I think I slipped into one. I actually have a question. My question is, and we'll see if there's a few other questions pop up while I'm asking this question. So, folks, if you have questions for Lambert, please pop them in the chat just now. But Lambert, I have a question. You mentioned Chuck Missler, and you said you were a friend of his. And I've always been fascinated with some of his writings and some of the things he looked into, because He's obviously a very well-respected Bible teacher. Before, obviously he's passed away now. He's in heaven. He's gone on ahead. But he was very well respected as a Bible teacher. But he dared to go into areas and talk about things that few other people did. And so I'm just fascinated by the fact that you said he was a friend of yours. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about him, what you know about him. That would be just fantastic.
I met him many years, 50 years ago, and we've been friends for a long time. He's extremely brilliant, IQ of 195 or something like that. His wife told me once. He went to Annapolis to the Naval Academy. He served on the boards of a lot of scientific groups in the government, high-level security clearances, so he had access to all sorts of information that you and I wouldn't be privy to. So he knew about atomic weapons and spaceships and fractals and all that stuff. And he also became a follower of Jesus at Chuck Smith's church and Bible teacher there at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. He became very disillusioned with the church in his later years. That's why he said small groups are the future of the church. And he got pretty frustrated with a lot of Christians who were too set in concrete. He got very much involved in my work in Israel back in the 80s and 90s when we explored with the radar under the Temple Mount and got involved with the Jews who want to build the third temple. He and I led tour groups to Israel for quite a few years. And he was a brilliant, congenial guy, but he was so smart. I think it was very hard for him to come down to my level or your level. Now, he knew so much about atomic weapons, I think he was afraid we were going to have a war with Russia and we'd have MAD, mutually assured destruction. The U.S. would probably take out Russia and they'd take us out, so the U.S. would not exist anymore. So he moved to New Zealand. I think he thought, well, if I go down there, I'm going to last longer and the U.S. is going to go away. That wasn't quite correct. Although his work in New Zealand has taken off. And of course, he founded Koinonia House in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. All of his books and commentators are available from K-House. Absolutely encyclopedic memory. He knew the Bible backwards and forwards. He did commentaries on the whole. He learned Hebrew. So he was just a cornucopia of insights into the Bible that you and I would miss. He's been gone for a couple of weeks.
I'm curious, what did you find under the Temple Mount? Did you find anything under the Temple Mount?
I worked in Egypt for 3 field seasons, trying to see if we can see through the pyramids with the radar, which turns out the pyramid limestone is high clay content, high water content. It's not radar transparent. The limestones in Israel are radar transparent. So we went over there for 6 weeks, I think, so 1983. And sure enough, our radar signals will penetrate into all sorts of places, tombs, buildings, and so on. So we had an opportunity to take the radar under the Temple Mount, and we got it all loaded up to work at midnight. The guy, Rabbi Getz, who owned the rabbinical tunnel, was going to meet us there, and we showed up at midnight and ready to go in because we're going to look through the walls and find the location of the temple. And the police came up and stopped us and said, "You can't do that. We've got an intelligence report that the Muslims are going to riot if you put any radar signals under their Temple Mount." So we went home very disillusioned. And the next morning, the police inspector apologized. He said, "I'm so sorry we had to stop you, but we're kind of concerned about security and we don't want a lot of rioting if we can help. But your work is important, so come back when it's a little safer." So I built a website called templemount.org along with Chuck Missler and others, and it's still there if anybody wants to know the history of the temples, because that was something that Chuck Missler and I unfolded, was where the temples are probably located, the whole history. And there will be a third temple and a fourth temple, I think. But of course, the real temple is the body of the believer, that we are the temple of God. So it's okay to have a building that you call the temple of God, but the real temple is where Jesus lives, and that's in hearts. Okay.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, I got to ask this because we're out there on the limb. We're talking science. We're talking the Bible. What's your take on the Nephilim and the giants?
I think Michael Heiser does good work about the fall of certain set of angels who came down to earth and either took over human lives or otherwise possessed men who had intercourse with women and brought a race into the world of half men, half giants, the Nephilim, genetic defects. And these giants proliferated and filled the Holy Land at the time of the conquest. And some of them were big, like Goliath and Og, and they're half breeds. Now, Michael Heiser starts on this, and what's his name? Not Heiser. The Marzulli's work on is excellent. He's just a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Because giant skeletons have been found all over the world. Allegedly, there's a bunch under the Smithsonian and under lock and key. They deny that, but there's plenty of evidence that there were giant people on the earth, not just hormonally big, but big. And they would have been thoroughly pagan. So this infiltration of the giant fallen angels before the flood and after the flood corrupted the whole human race, and got into the Canaanites and demonized the religion of the Canaanites that caused so much problem down through history, even to now. This is a vast subject.
So do you think that we are seeing a resurgence of Genesis 6 with the gene editing therapies that the pharmaceutical industry is putting out there now?
I don't know. It's suspicious. Certainly our culture is so broken down now that we don't have any protection against the invasion of the demonic deceiving spirits, lying spirits. The religion in America today is not Christianity anymore. It's more like Hinduism. We've bought into the Canaanite religion of Baal, Moloch, and Ashtaroth. The sex gods of the Canaanites are the national gods of most of America right now. We're really at a very low state, with very, very few followers of Jesus in the U.S. anymore. That's terribly sad, because I think the U.S., maybe we've had our day in history and we're going to fade away like other great civilizations. Yeah. We do not have a covenant with God. Israel does, but the U.S. does not. We have pretty fantastic roots.
But individually, we have a covenant. So
that's absolutely right. We are under a new covenant as individuals, and we're a whole new race, a whole new generation. Yes.
And actually, we're citizens of the kingdom of God.
We're citizens of heaven. Boy, that's an awesome theme when you think about it.
It is.
It just opens up vistas of thinking about what the future holds for us.
Okay, John, I'm sorry I cut in.
That's okay. That's all good. So along this line, Lambert, there's a question here. You said, I'll just read the question as it's written. You said, based on creation in Genesis, the earth is about 6,000 years old. Have you seen scientific proof that the earth existed pre-Adam? So I think this is an old earth, new earth question, perhaps.
The earth has an appearance of age that's in geology and in a lot of natural science. And if I was to walk backwards in history, starting today, and I could walk one day at a time, I would walk 50 generations to get to the time of Christ, and then I'd walk back another 72 generations, and I'd get to Adam. So Matthew gives us every one of those links. So we're biologically the descendants of Adam and Eve, and we can date Adam and Eve as being about 6,000 BC. Bishop Usher said 4004. I think it's older because of this speed of light decay issue. Now, that means that Adam did not live very long ago. Now, the population alone, if you put one man and one woman on the earth 6,000 years ago, you'll fill it up with people rather nicely. If you try to put a man and woman on the earth a long time ago, you'd have a universe full of dead bodies now. So we know the birth rates down through history. So an old origin for man does not fit the data very well. Now, that doesn't mean, doesn't make any sense to create man and then put him on an old earth that's been around for millions of years. I think the earth itself was created with its appearance of age. And that's another compression of time. So,
well, some of us look like we've aged before our time too. So it's true, you know?
Imagine living only 70, 80 years like Moses said, Psalm 90. And here the ancients are all living 800, 900 years. And then staging and going on into another form.
Yeah, Methuselah was a bit older than we are, wasn't he?
969 years, yeah.
Just under 1,000. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so a question now, which might be a time question, so maybe that's is related. This person writes, what is your understanding of Einstein's proposition, time is in the fourth dimension? And then the person asks, and the fifth dimension is beyond time, is a question mark.
The physics up until Einstein thought that we lived in a world of three dimensions, space, time, and length, width, and height. Einstein came along and said, put time into that equation as the fourth dimension. So from the time of Einstein, about 1912 or 1917, the physicists believe that we live in a four-dimensional space-time continuum, that these four dimensions fit together into a mathematical model. That says nothing about other dimensions that are in the spiritual realm. We're talking about the physical world. So, as I said, I think they're probably right now 10 dimensions total. But science only can study 4. That's all we can. If you can't take data and take measurements and compare notes, you can't do science very well. It's got to be a consensus based on observables. Well, you can't observe angels. Consistent.
Yeah, unless they pop up, you know, which they do.
Okay, so the next question is this. The person writes, and I'm just going to read it. You're an awesome speaker, they write. Thank you, and looking forward to learning more. Now to their question. Why do you suppose there is no ocean in heaven? And then the second part, do you think there is weather there?
Wow, those are hard questions. This new heavens and the new earth with no oceans, I think there will be bodies of water. My mentor, Ray Stedman, thought that we'd have bodies of fresh water in heaven, and that salt water was an antiseptic right now to hold back the disease and pollution that we'd have if we had freshwater oceans right now. There's enough water in the oceans to cover the whole earth. If you just rearrange the land, plowed all the mountains into the ocean, you'd have water over the whole earth right now. I don't think heaven will be ocean free. I think there'll be great bodies of fresh water and lakes and rivers and waterfalls and all that sort of thing. And I think there'll be time travel in heaven. So I don't think we're going to just have a heaven that's all just dry land. I think we'll have probably continents and countries, but it's not going to be hard to go to London. If I get on my flying carpet, I can go to spend an afternoon with C.S. Lewis in England and not have to worry about the long jet lag and expensive airfare and dangerous airplanes. So
Yeah, I wonder if they'll be hosting little gatherings up in that little pub they used to meet in up in Oxford. You never know.
absolutely.
So I know that you have mentioned the Hebraic. So in Hebrew, there's a word called Hashemayim, and that's the waters of heaven that were divided. So that indicates that there would be waters in the heavens. But then isn't there a place in scripture? I'm scratching my head because I'm having a little memory thing. Maybe you can help me out. Either one of you can help me out. Doesn't it say, and the sea will be no more?
Yes, it does. I think the oceans as they are now will be no more. The big saltwater oceans that are so vast. Ray Stedman thought freshwater, yes, and things like the Great Lakes, but not necessarily these vast bodies of water like the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. So we got rivers and waterfalls and lakes, uh, but not this incredible division between the continents now that makes it so hard for us to go to a foreign country, so inconvenient. It's sure fun talking to you guys today.
Yeah, it is. It's a pleasure. Do we have any more questions?
I've got one more question, Celeste.
Okay.
Yes, one more question for Lambert. And this is my question. This question is, what do you think of the changes that you're seeing in terms of Earth weather and some of those things right now? You know, do you see a connection with some of the things that are spoken of biblically, Book of Revelation, all of that? You know, do you see a progression toward those things in what you're observing scientifically about the changes that we're seeing in terms of the Earth?
As far as I can tell, the earthquakes are not increasing. Volcano activity is not increasing. I don't worry about global warming because the sun has an important effect on weather on the Earth and the average temperatures. No way are we going to be able to change the weather by human effort. California right now is in the middle of an incredible drought. We had a little rain this weekend, but we're way short. Reservoirs are empty. It's very short. And if people would just get together and pray, I'm sure God would bring rain. He's holding back the rain because we're so evil, we're so corrupt, we're so. If people would just get together, God would be generous with the rain. We have a climate here very much like Israel. They get normal rain. They're doing something right.
Okay, now I've just got some more questions that have dropped in here. So hang on, let me
Well,
read
just
these.
a sec before,
Okay.
because we dropped a question and we don't want to we want to answer the person's question. Is there weather in heaven?
Yes, but I don't think it's going to be as extreme as the extreme heat of the desert and the extreme cold of Siberia. I think we're going to have seasons that are delightful and because of the change involved. Now, world weather and climate changed radically at the flood because the vapor canopy collapsed and all the water up there in the heavens that made the weather uniform. The Earth had uniform weather, probably no major rainfall before the flood. So we've got this big cyclical seasons right now, and they're too extreme and too inconvenient. Siberia is too cold and the Sahara is too hot, and we like the contrast, but we don't like to go through that. So I think we're going to have delightful changes of season in heaven that are refreshing and enjoyable. And we can travel to places where there's snow, probably. I don't know. Wait and see.
Okay, thank you. So next question, somebody's asking about a gentleman called Dr. John Hagelin, who is the leader of the Transcendental Meditation group, as far as I can understand, formerly from CERN. Why did he say that the God particle is found in the fifth dimension?
Well, that's speculation. It's interesting. And the work at CERN is absolutely fascinating to study because it's just leading edge. science, and we're pushing back the frontiers in our knowledge of the atom, doesn't tend to take God into account, which is that not a lot of people at CERN who know Jesus, and out in front of CERN is this big image of Shiva, the Hindu destroyer. So it's dark side. I don't know.
Okay. The next question: what is your definition or description? They ask. Well, the question I asked: what is your description of a dimension?
Of
a dimension. What is a dimension? How would you define a dimension?
Well, we have dimensions in everyday life. You have a ruler or a yardstick that's marked off in inches or feet. That's one way of measuring something. So you measure space with yardsticks. You measure time with a clock, a pendulum clock, or an electronic clock, because we keep track of all the nanoseconds. This is all agreed. We have standards for how long the meter is and the length of time. And these are all in Paris in a museum garden where they're well defined. And we can't do science in the ordinary physical world without very careful measurement. We've got radio frequencies, and light is at the one end of the spectrum, and we've got the internet, and we've got shortwave radio, and we've got all sorts of, just all kinds of stuff. All that's got to be measured with great precision. So that's where we get dimensionality. And that's hard to talk about dimensions in the spiritual world. I don't think I know much about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Celeste.
I said he doesn't know about it yet.
Yes.
We will all get to know the answer before too long.
Yes.
Indeed. So now a theological question, Lambert. Do you believe the millennial reign of Jesus is literal, a time in the future, or is he reigning now in a symbolic millennial reign?
The mentions of the millennium in Revelation are quite literal, I think. It says 1,000 years. I think it means 1,000 years. Yes, Jesus is reigning now. He's in charge of the whole universe, and he runs the dark side and the bright side, and everything is under his control. He's been handed the title deed to the earth. Revelation chapter 1, he's handed it. He's been told by the Father, look, I want you to go down and fix everything. That's the Father telling the Son, look, here's the title deed. I'm putting you in charge of everything. Work it out. I want you to put man back in charge of the universe where he started out. We don't need all these angels as intermediaries between God and man and the earth. So I think the Bible should be taken literally whenever possible. And after you've exhausted the literal meaning, then you can go, because usually there's a lot of depth in every passage of the Bible.
Amen. Now, next questioner asks, I'll read it to you as it's written. I recall hearing that C is the great multitude of peoples in prophecy. Can you explain what you know about this? The person writes.
And we have the sea of nations, which means great numbers of people, as large number of people, like the number of drops of water in the ocean is large. Number of stars in the heavens is large. When God told Abraham, who's the pioneer of monotheism, he said, I'm giving you two families. I'm giving you a people as numerous as grains of sand on the seashore. That would be the earthly people, the Jews. And I'm giving you another people as numerous as the stars of the heaven. That would be the church. So Abraham has two families, and they're great numbers in each. So we're children of Abraham and Sarah. It's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Now, question here, returning to the question of CERN, somebody writes, yes, CERN is very dark. Is that why people have left who comment on the God particle, in your view?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know.
Back to the weather question. Will the seasons of weather in heaven commence after Jesus comes, or do you feel that they are already happening?
I don't think there's any serious changes going on now. And the rapture is going to change an awful lot of things because we go on this accelerated program of diminishing the population and all these terrible judgments in the book of Revelation that follow, cascading one after another, that constitute the book of Revelation. I don't know. We'll have to just kind of wait and see.
Okay. I think, thank you so much, Lambert. I really appreciate having this discussion with you and having the opportunity to ask these questions. I look forward to a longer chat with you myself too. So thank you so much. And
anytime, what a delight it is. And I'm so privileged to get to know you today and your audience. And thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome to our community. So I will be sending you the information, and it's up to you. People come, people go. If they have time, they can attend. If they don't, and then, maybe we'll get to know you a little bit better too.
Yeah, and please send me the link, because I have
Yes.
a bunch of friends out here that want to watch our time together today.
Okay, we will make sure that you get the link. That's John's department.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Lambert.
Oh, what an absolute delight. Thank you.
And would you consider coming back again sometime?
Oh, anytime. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you next time, you guys.